Welcome to Anita Talks History and Genealogy. So glad that you all could join me today, which is Friday, November the 21st. We have Indigenous Peoples Month this entire month of November. And out of respect for the ancestors, we are, instead of making it one day, the day called Thanksgiving, we know that we have yet to have a Thanksgiving for what occurred when these folks showed up on these shores. Um, I just want to, welcome everyone here. I'm so pleased that you could join me. And today, um, again, I'm celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, and we're getting close to to that day that they call Thanksgiving. Um, but on the 22nd, which is tomorrow, on a Saturday, from 1 to 3 p.m., I have an Indigenous Peoples Genealogy Workshop, and I'm asking you all to tune in and join me. What I want to do is share some tips, answer some questions, you know, and have an information day, because I continue to get questions and I continue to try to answer to the best of my ability. But a lot of times when you're asking for, you know, uh, 3 or 4 generations, or even when you're starting out, it's difficult to answer that, to sit down and answer that. Um, it takes time and it takes knowledge. And that's what I want to start sharing tomorrow on the first workshop. And it's a genealogy workshop, and it's Indigenous Peoples Day workshop. And if you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can come free. If you're not subscribed, it's $45. And I'm going to put up the information for you to, the form for you to sign in. Um, or you can email me. I'll leave my email address if you want to personally, sign up with me. But we would like you all to join us tomorrow, and it will be worth your while. And with that, I want to also, before I get started, please like and subscribe, and also share, and become a part of our community. This is Indigenous Peoples Network, and we want to build forward. We want you to be a part of the journey, and as you pick up your information, you can also share with what you've learned um, about your family history. Um, yeah, and it's cool. We're laid back. We're welcoming, and we also have merchandise now. We have shirts, and we have uh, we have shirts and cups. We have hoodies. We have handkerchiefs. Just all kinds of merchandise with insignia from our channel, from Anita Talks History and Genealogy. And so let's get started. And so since this is their Thanksgiving Day, that they're getting ready to celebrate, um, you know, we don't hear the other side of what happened. Um, we don't hear about the um, the massacres that took place, and that many of these universities, their esteemed universities like Harvard and Yale, are built on native lands, um, on native, not only native lands, but native sacred lands. Many of their buildings in these, especially in these cities, even in Philadelphia, is built on mounds, on the indigenous people's mounds. Um, Pennsylvania has many mounds, um, and Harvard. I believe there was a brother. His ancestors were native from Yale, and they got re, recompensated or compensated for the land that was taken from his ancestors. Um, and those tribes that were up there during the time of their Thanksgiving were eliminated. After these people, they helped these people survive. It wasn't just in, like they talk a lot about Jamestown, but it wasn't just Jamestown. It was also up up there in Massachusetts and in um, New Jersey, throughout the Northeast, as well as in the South, that they were annihilating the people, the native or indigenous people who welcomed them to these shores. Uh, and the the you know, of course they're not going to tell you about that in history. But if you ask or if you do your own research, which they don't teach a lot of us to do research, you will find that truth. You will find that the ancestors of the people who built Harvard, who call themselves the Mayflower people, that they massacred the native people up there where Harvard now sits in Connecticut. Um, excuse me, yeah, where Harvard now sits in the Northeast. And this is why, like, I don't really like see it as a celebration. I remember growing up. Um, I remember growing up and being, having these holidays, and they were so special. But they were special because everyone worked so hard. Because those, they worked, like my father worked in a steel mill, and some of uh, the other parents in our family, they, both of them were working outside the home. So my dad and several of my uncles worked in the steel mills, and whatever else they were doing was labor. They were not anywhere sitting around, sitting at desk. So they worked hard, and then when the holidays were the ones that the white folks called as holidays, they made up the holidays. So we didn't get together as Thanksgiving. We got together as family, seeing each other, because we didn't see that much of each other. Everybody was working all the time, or uh, resting, raising their families, or too busy to get together. And it was a part of our, like I grew up in a Church of God in Christ, and so it was a part of our celebration, our religious celebration. It was not called Thanksgiving. We didn't have turkeys, pictures of turkeys hanging on our doors or anything like that. The same way with Christmas. Christmas was about Christ, about the birth of Christ. That was what it was about. It wasn't no no celebration, no pagan celebration. it was a spiritual holiday, and you know, so we would have our church services, and it was about praying, because they were always praying to. Um, there was always something to pray about, money, somebody, being harassed, somebody being killed, or whatever. But that's neither here nor there. But like I was saying, I was talking about Harvard, and Harvard's in Massachusetts, and I should have mentioned that because my baby brother, he graduated from Harvard, and I have I know several people who graduated from that college, but not knowing the history of uh, of um, that land and the people whose spirits are not at rest. How can their spirits rest when they were, slaughtered? The people who you fed and whose lives you saved turned around and slaughtered you. Animals don't do that. Even if you feed a lion and he knows, oh, I can come and get food there, they will not turn around and kill you. They will see you as, that's my friend. That person fed me. Even a lion knows that. Why would human beings turn around and commit such atrocities against other human beings? Not only on a level of the United States and what happened when they showed up here, but when they showed up in Africa, when they showed up in Australia, when they showed up in Hawaii, wherever they showed up and they saw brown people, they went on a rampage and were killing us. They even, colonized India. They demoralized India. Any place that they could go. And if you open the door and let them in, it's like when I saw the movie Sinners, I was like, wow, that is telling their story. You open that door and let them in. Wow, look what happens. And it's just, and then they turn around and look at you like you're in their land. What kind of thinking goes on in somebody's mind that does not have history? No, they don't teach each other history, so they don't know the history. But they will say that you are on their land, as if we don't know the history. Unfortunately, I know the history backwards and forwards. We know, as much as people complained about immigrants, the Mexicans, being here illegally, Texas, California, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, that was Mexico for thousands of years. So can you imagine that those people that they're saying are here illegally, whose ancestors are buried here, are not welcome on their ancestral homeland? And I don't want people coming at me saying, oh, you're defending those immigrants or this or that. No, I'm defending the indigenous people to these lands, and it's not the European. Okay? So we're supposed to have free speech, but we also have to remember to tell the truth while we're speaking, because God is listening. Creator wants us to tell the truth. Once I know the truth, then I need to tell it. And that is, that's my thing, is if you know the truth, then tell it. So when people would say, who are you? I said, I'm native, I'm indigenous to these lands. I was saying that as a child. We're Indian. This is our land. When I was coming up in Pennsylvania, and I was getting pushback from people who, some of us who were, oh, you just think you're better. You just don't want anybody to be from Africa. And I told them, I have a great great grandmother who was from Africa. And guess what? My great great grandfather was from Europe. He was a white man who owned her. I know that story too, and I tell that story. But I also tell the story of my native ancestors who were traumatized here, who faced genocide, who faced separation, who faced forced assimilation. That is why I have an uh, indigenous peoples network here on YouTube, because I'm talking about land that that was taken from us. And whenever I hear, I have talked to people who have land back movements, and most of those people are going by, oh, it has to be this last name or that last name. And and they already are coming off wrong, because those last names meant nothing. They were given to our indigenous ancestors by the Europeans. They had to be Christianed to even walk around in their own on their own land. So they were given those last names. That does not mean that they are the original people to these lands, because another thing they were doing was moving people around. They were enslaving us. And I found out that our ancestors were enslaved when my grandfather on my dad's side, my paternal grandfather, Grandpa Baxter, um, he was enslaved from South Carolina. I mean, his people were enslaved in South Carolina, but his people were brought from Columbia, South America, into South Carolina as slaves. And the reason I know that is because my brother's DNA test that he did with African ancestry came back 100% Native American from Columbia, South America. And they said that on there, because they gave him a certificate of native, of native ancestry, and on it they said that my dad's people were the indigenous people to that region where Columbia, South America is now. And my grandfather was a dark man. Well, I mean, that could have been from intermarrying too. So I'm not going to say. But his features, if you look, when I looked at his features and my uncle's features, you could see that there is there is a face there that does indeed look indigenous, regardless of the color. And so this is on my father's side, and I knew that on my mother's side that they were indigenous people, that they were from Pennsylvania, from that region, and they were being moved around, pushed off their land, um, and they were given the last names of the people who were pushing them off the land. So I have, the Davis. Well, these are people who came over, and they were Methodists, and they came and they built their church on native, native people's where the reservations, not where they weren't reservations, on the villages, near the villages of the native peoples. And then all of a sudden they were taking over all of the land, and they were forced to um, I think this was the Methodist church, and they were forced to join that church and take on their last names, which is the last name of Davis, and that was in Somerset County, Maryland. And they were the Mannequin, not the Monacan, because I'm a member of the Monacan Indian Nation, but these are Mannequin Indians, and I think it was 1692. They were there in Somerset County, Maryland, and all of a sudden, like not even 30 years later, they're up in Delaware because they've been run off their land, and they're carrying the surname of Davis. And these are, so they were living in what they called Sussex. Oh, they were living in Sussex County, uh, Delaware, and these were where the tribes were. I think it's Indian Head or something like that. They were calling it around the rivers because they were still around the rivers, and so they were separated from the Mannequin, and they were coming up, and they were joining with the tribes that were in that region, and they called them the Delaware Indians. But there was, the tribes were being pushed around and moved around, and they would go find refuge in other tribes, and they would become a part of that tribe. The Nanticoke are in Delaware, so the Davises, my Davises, and also my ancestors with the last name of Green, they became part of the Nanticoke Indian tribes, and also and still connected to the Methodist Church there because that's who was that's the church that was moving in on their land, encroaching on their land, and they were being forced to um, to go into the church and be baptized so that they could live in peace. And they still weren't able to live in peace, you know. So just like when I'm telling the story, I feel so much anger, and I wonder, you know, how the native people felt at the time. How did my ancestors feel? They probably felt hopeless because you're watching people who are willing to kill children, who are willing to kill women and children, who are willing to kill your parents, then take you and into a mission school, like the Catholics had the mission schools, but so did the Methodists. They were taking children into their mission school. And what do you think a mission is? The mission here in the Americas was to assimilate the natives and to get access to their land, to get them off the land. And the first thing they did was to enslave the natives. And they was, just like when slaves were being brought here and impregnated, they were impregnating native women, and that was in order to get access to the land. Everything they did was was in order to get access to the land. And there was yeah they and I was watching this Flower Moon movie about the Osage Indians in Oklahoma, where these white males were coming in and marrying native women and killing them to get their land. Well, that's what they were doing when they first came here, and also making sure they have plenty of alcohol. They set up all these nightclubs full of alcohol. I'm telling you, sinners really told the story in a couple of hours of what's going on Let those who have eyes see, let those who have ears hear, because nothing's changed. Their methods have not changed, and the reason that we don't see progress here in the United States, and this is in my humble opinion, everything here is my opinion, okay? We don't, because they continue to bring Europeans here. They don't want immigrants coming here from Mexico or South America. They don't want the Asians coming here. They don't want people from India coming here any longer. And they certainly don't want the people from the islands coming here any longer. And like Trump was saying, he wanted to make this America great again, but what he's talking about is making it a country where white people rule again. So they continue to bring Europeans here. That never stops, and no one says anything. We don't say nothing. I've been on planes, and everybody on that plane spoke Russian. They weren't from Russia. They were from the Ukraine. Plane loads of people looking at me like I was in their country. Everybody headed to, D.C., coming back from D.C., going to Atlanta. I was like, wow, it's just interesting to me that nobody ever protests them bringing in Europeans or even white people coming from Canada. But they complain about people coming here from Haiti or people coming here from the Caribbean or, Jamaica or Mexico or South America. But Europeans are welcome. And it's like, wink, wink. Nobody ever says anything, including us. In fact, it's not even spoken of. And what's that about? I mean, I'm saying this because this is the month, their holidays are, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Christmas, then Easter. Their holidays, which have nothing to do with Christianity or spirituality, loving your neighbor, doing good deeds. Nothing. They have turned it into a capitalist corporate nightmare for those of us who just want to live in peace. And, so this is all, Trump is not doing anything new. He's just doing it out in the open. So we know who he is. We can see who he is. It's not what they're doing, it's what we tolerate, what we allow to happen. I'm not going to tolerate not being able to speak my truth, to speak about my ancestors who built this country, who were in the Revolutionary War, who were in the War of 1812, who were in the Civil War. My dad and my uncles were in World War II. My brothers and my cousins served during Vietnam. We have been here. We have done it, and we have to fight for reparations. And I'm not ashamed to say reparations. I don't care what them folks say. Nobody's talking to them folks that are talking about why should we pay reparation. Ain't nobody talking to you. We're talking to the government. They built this country on the backs of slaves, indigenous slaves, and African slaves. So we're never going to stop demanding reparations. But we know that you don't pay your bills We know that America is a debtor nation, you know, and shame on you for allowing that atrocity to hang over the history of the United States of America. Shame on you. You right now. I'm going to wind this up. Right now, what's going on in America is a culmination of what has been going on since its inception, since colonization, when the natives were here minding their own business, and something evil and wicked came and took over their land and their lives. They didn't even just want the land. They wanted to force them to assimilate and to bow down to them. The same thing they did in Africa. The same thing they did when they went to India. The same thing they did in Australia. They tried to do it to China, and China said, no, 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 thank you. You know, here, take a bath and go back to where you came from. You know, China wouldn't allow it. They want Russia to be a part of the capitalist corporate system. And they were almost successful until Putin came along. And Putin is like, no, I don't think so. Because they want Putin to go to Africa and exploit Africa like the imperialists are doing to Africa. And Putin is, I think I'll go over there and I'll talk to the Africans and we'll see what we can work out. Same with the Chinese. But, you know, Xi, he goes over there and he talks to Xi. Let's see what we can work out. I'll build you, help you build roads. We'll help you open factories. We'll help you develop so you can take care of your own self. And the imperialists don't want it. They went after and killed Muammar Gaddafi because he wanted Africa to unite, and that is a threat to the imperialists. But these people call themselves Christians, and nobody wants to be a Christian because who wants to align themselves with that, with their imperialist way of thinking, with the wars, with the robbing and genocide against nations. Nobody wants that, you know. So with that, I'm going to end, and I'm hoping that I will see you all tomorrow from 1 to 3. We're going to be, it's going to be online and or virtual, as they say, and from 1 to 3 p.m. my time, which is Pacific. And please contact me for the forms to sign up if you haven't signed up, and also the links, because I'm going to be sending out the links tomorrow, late this evening and tomorrow. I will send out the links to those of you who registered for the workshop. And also, you can Cash App me at Cash App, $, Wills, WILLS 920, or Venmo, ANITA Wills, WILLS 4. That's my Venmo account. And also check out the merchandise. And if you have any questions, please feel free to, shoot me the questions. And otherwise, I'll see you in the morning. Good night, everybody.